founder, CEO at Sabretooth Recruiting. And today I'm really fortunate to have someone who's been a founder, who's had a lot of success, and is now working on giving back to people following a similar path. So Noah Isaacs, thanks so much for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Oh no, happy to. And I think it'd be important as we get this going, not just to share a little bit about you and your pathway, but I'd also like to hear something. I'm sure our audience want to hear some more about Realize HQ, because that's your latest endeavor. And what caught my attention is, I think part of behind this is you're trying to help other people follow a path that you followed as a successful founder. So what can you kind of give us in terms of 90-second overview that lays it all out?
Yeah, I'm trying to lay hopefully a better path than I took as a founder. So a lot of what it's about is, building on the mistakes that I made. But just briefly background, grew up in Northern California, went to school in Montreal. I had read Moneyball in high school, and it was my dream to be a GM. So got to play baseball in college. They cut me
Hmm.
because I was the worst in the league, but studied applied mathematics and business, ended up working in baseball operations for the Toronto Blue Jays, and then realized it wasn't the right fit. So I moved
Hmm.
to New York. One of my best friends got me a job at a commercial real estate appraisal company. I had no idea what commercial appraisal was, but thought that it was a little bit antiquated and broken. So
Hmm.
worked there for about 3 years, saved up as much money as I could, and in 2015 quit to build Bowery valuation with my best friend. And the idea was we would build technology to make commercial appraisers more efficient.
Okay.
So did that. We were, according to Deloitte, one of the fastest growing companies in North America. We grew the team to over 300 people, raised over $80 million from Goldman Sachs and Capital
Wow.
One, made a ton of mistakes along the way, a lot of mistakes that are hard to undo.
Hmm.
And I left Bowery last year to start Realize. And the mission of Realize is to help leaders realize their potential, because I think there is a crisis of poor leadership out
Hmm.
there. And even though I studied business, I did not feel prepared to lead an organization. And there's a lot of bad information, a lot of misinformation, and wanted to focus on my experience, best practices. So I listen to about a business book a week. I'm a very slow reader, but I'm a fast listener. And my method is really about accountability. And we can talk about that more, but really the goal is just helping people like you tap into their unmet potential. And there is so much, for myself included.
It's interesting to me. You talk about unmet potential, and are there a group of people with more unmet potential who work really hard to achieve that potential than professional athletes? I mean, when you think about it, and some of them are probably at near potential, right, in many respects, but the whole athletic journey is about utilizing and leveraging more and more and more of that at the next level and the next level and the next level.
Yeah, I mean, my background's in baseball, and I haven't followed sports in
Uh-huh.
years, but I look at people like Steph Curry. Steph Curry's got a shooting coach. He's the greatest shooter of all time. Tiger Woods, in his heyday, he had a coach, right?
Yep.
Even if you have the most innate talent in the world, the best are always trying to be better. And it's very hard to access that without coaching.
Yeah, because it takes a different view, and I think the word you used, and I've heard it underused and misused and abused and overused, is accountability, and
Yeah.
that's hard to achieve by your lonesome. I mean, I think there are very few people who just innately have the discipline and awareness, the perspective to truly be accountable. You need, like you said, a coach or someone to kind of guide you down that path. And it leads me to maybe the biggest question of this conversation. When you look out over the landscape of things you could possibly help with, what do you think the biggest problem you can help someone solve or navigate is? I mean, what's the biggest, nastiest thing that you can help with?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's I think important to be clear on the one thing. I try and do many things,
Mm-hmm.
but more than anything, I try and move leaders from a state of being highly reactive, where the
Mm-hmm.
world is happening to them, to a state of being proactive, where they're in the driver's seat and they're in control. And being a leader is incredibly overwhelming. There's no limit to the numbers of problems you can solve or the fires to put out
Mm-hmm.
or opportunities to pursue. And so a lot of my focus is on providing that clarity. Everyone I work with feels like they don't have enough time in the day. And part of that is true. And that's just a lack of organizational clarity, understanding where do I need to be focusing.
Mm-hmm.
And even more than a lack of time in the day, they don't have enough energy in the day. And so we spend a lot of time trying to understand, okay, let's do an energy audit. What are the activities that are uh, energy accretive to me?
Mm-hmm.
After I do it, I feel even more energized. And what are the activities that are depleting? And there's personality assessments we can do. But more than anything, when I talk to founders, they just feel overwhelmed. And I try and put the driver's seat, put them in the driver's seat and make them really feel like they're in control for the first time. And it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yeah, and I mean, oh, you hit a hot button for me. I don't know if you realize this coming in. Um, we all have limited energy budgets every day. And it's funny because I have these conversations with professionals. I've had this conversation with executives. I've had it with my teenage kids. You've got X amount of energy per day, and there are areas you can add to it a little bit, accretive, like you said, but there are a lot of areas that deplete it, that take from it, and there's only so much you can do, and you got to manage that just like you'd manage your time. And some of that we might loosely say, that's prioritization, but I think one of the things that you and I spoke about earlier was this idea of organizational clarity. You know, I think there's a great book that was recommended to me years ago. It's really simple. It's called The Question Behind the Question, and it clarified for me something I've asked candidates over the years. If somebody would say, I'd ask someone, well, why do you want to make a move now? Why does this job interest you, this opportunity? Oh, I want to make more money. Well, a lot of recruiters, internal and external, stop right there. Okay, this guy's motivated by money. No. What is driving that desire to make more money? Is it ego? It could be. Could it be that he's expecting a first child? Could it be that there's a health issue somewhere? Just could it be, oh, this is what my peer group is doing, so I have to keep up? Well, I mean, until you don't really know what's motivating that person. And more importantly, that person may lack clarity necessary to help navigate an interview and job opportunity scenario. I think that's critically important. I think a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of founders start companies and they lack clarity on what it is they're trying to do.
Yeah,
And maybe that's because they're focused on the wrong things, because we all go in, know what I know I have. I want to solve one of the biggest, nastiest problems in talent acquisition. It's a horribly inefficient marketplace right now. Well, how do I go about that? That's different, I think, than something that you and I touch lightly on, that you need clarity around your mission, not just around a problem you're trying to solve.
absolutely. So I think one of the challenges is most leaders think they have clarity,
Mm-hmm.
but they have a lot of trouble articulating very simple questions. Questions like, why do you exist as a business? Why should it exist? That's your purpose. Or how are you going to succeed? That's your strategy. Most CEOs I talk to have a strategy. They just
Mm-hmm.
can't clearly articulate it. And if you can't clearly articulate it, it's impossible to empower your team to execute against it.
Yeah.
So, what I see over and over again be highly successful is you hire amazing people. Talent is number one. I don't think you can really win without talent. And number two is giving them the context they need to be successful. That's where organizational clarity comes in. And so I have a set of questions that I run through with my CEOs that we work with over time to develop that context, to really empower the amazing people you hire to
Mm-hmm.
execute and also for them to realize their potential as well.
Yeah. So you said CEO several times, and you and I both know context matters, right? So when you're talking to CEOs and you're talking to people that you can help solve these problems with, I mean, who are those people typically? Because they're CEOs of a 200K company and they're CEOs of a $200 billion company. I mean, where's your bailiwick that you can have the most impact?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think where I'm most impactful is in companies that have raised between $5 and $50 million and headcounts that are 15 to 150 people. I would say in general, my model is industry agnostic. There's just certain best practices that transcend industry, but I think you're going to have the most success working with me if you're a little bit larger than just a very early stage seed or pre-seed company.
And that's important to know. I mean, it's one thing to manage yourself, right, in your day to day and this sort of thing. It's something else when you got to lead and manage a team of people, often
Yeah, a lot of people
diverse
talk
thinking
about,
people.
absolutely. There's sort of, when you start a company, you have to occupy two spaces. The first is the founder, and the second is the CEO. And so there are very few places where you can learn to become a high quality CEO. And so that's
Hmm.
where a lot of my focus is. It's less on the founding. Founding is still important, but I'm there to help you transition from a founder. And to be clear, what does that mean? Founder is someone who's trying to find product market fit.
Hmm.
Once you have product market fit, it's time to pour gasoline on the fire, grow your team, grow your sales. And that's when you really have to become a CEO, which is very different.
What's the biggest difference you think?
Uh, you need more structure. You're managing more people for the
Hmm.
first time. And as you introduce more people, that introduces complexity. And managing that complexity is really challenging.
Yeah, it's funny that we can take something as complex as complexity and reduce it to we're adding layers of people. Because sometimes I think companies, maybe more than big companies too, maybe medium companies as well, we tend to look at people as more of this monolithic block. And whether you're looking at individuals or you're searching for certain talent, experience, skills, you can't do that. Because ultimately, this is not a country where what you are professionally is dictated from birth. I don't know if you ever did this when you were younger. Somebody recommended it to me when I was in college, and I took a little test at the back of a book, and it says, well, hey, here are your 3 areas for your career that you're most likely to succeed. I'm not in any one of them, not even close. And maybe I should be grateful for that.
Yeah. I mean, before I started working as a commercial appraiser, I didn't know what a commercial appraisal was.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly didn't know what an executive coach was. And I think that's part of the magic of where we live and the opportunity that we have in front of us. And I'm extremely fortunate to get to pursue something that I love that I didn't even know existed.
Yeah. Well, and I mean that's the great thing is you can change. Uh, you know, it's when you read up on these people who knock it out of the park. We in tech or whatever other sector, they raise a lot of money, they build a company, they exit, or they stay in it and lead it into the future, and they make gazillions of dollars. Very, very, very few of those people out of the whole universe of people trying to do that make it the first time around or the second. In fact, on average, most people don't get $1 million in net worth until they're older than 50. There are those who do, and I say kudos to them and wish it were me, but that's the way the ball bounces sometimes. But this is such a diverse economy. Man, you can go so many different directions. And that's exciting for me, I think. And the fact that you are talking about, hey, I can take a founder and we can help get you to be a CEO, to grow and scale what you've created. I mean, that's literally teaching an old dog new tricks. I mean, if that makes sense. And it can't be an easy thing to do because every founder slash CEO in the future state, they've got to be different. They've got to have different motivations, different things that drive them. And I can't but imagine it presents its own set of challenges when you engage with these guys and gals. What do you think is the biggest hang up most have to make that transition?
I think I think one of the biggest challenges as CEO is a lack of accountability. As the CEO or even as a founder, you have a team, you can hold that team accountable. It's very hard for them to hold you accountable. Even if you have co-founders, it's very challenging for your co-founders to hold you accountable. and investors don't have enough context or alignment to hold you accountable. And a lot of my coaching method is around holding these CEOs accountable. I run them like they report to me. So I'm going to ask them, hey, what do you want to do between now and our next session? And at our next session, I'm going to follow up and say, hey, did you do that? And if not, let's talk about why. And let's make sure that we solve whatever the issues were that made you not meet or exceed those expectations. Now, the power dynamics are different. They can fire me whenever they want, right? So it's, it's a little bit different than having a boss. But just having someone there asking you, what are you going to accomplish? And knowing that they're going to check in with you in 2 weeks is incredibly powerful. It is very hard for you to access your potential without someone directly holding you accountable for anyone.
Yeah.
Even people who
Yeah.
are good at it, they're not accessing their full potential.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Let me ask you, if someone wants to talk with you and dive deeper in this, Noah, what's the best way for them to find you?
Best way is on LinkedIn,
Okay.
Noah-Isaacs, or send me an email at noah@realizehq.com. That's going to be the best way.
Noah at realizehq.com. By the way, I love the name, Realize HQ. It took me just a second of reading what's on the website to go, aha, I think I'm starting to get it. So great selection on the domain, man, and the name. Noah, thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for joining me today here on the C-Suite Edge.
John, thanks so much for having me. This was awesome. Really appreciate it.